Hi. I asked a question earlier on Facebook, and the question was, do you know how, and more importantly, why a cancer cell becomes a cancer cell? And many of you said no, but you would like to know. So I thought, rather than try and write it down, because it's not complicated, but it's easier if I explain it how I understand it anyway. I don't profess to be a scientist, I don't profess to be a biologist. I have done A-level biology, so I do have a little more knowledge than perhaps someone who hasn't studied biology, but by no means am I an expert in the field. So first of all, I'd like to explain how, like I said, how I understand how a cancer cell becomes a cancer cell. Now, basically, there is each and every cell has to go through a cycle in order to replicate itself. Obviously, all of our cells have to replicate billions of times a day, every single day, in order. The skin on the back of our hand isn't the skin we were born with. It replicates, it sheds. We have new skin. It's the same with every other. Our blood, our lungs, our heart, everything. It's all the same. So our cells go through a cycle. I can't remember what the cycle's called, but I do know there's a part of that cycle called apoptosis, that if the cell is recognised to be mutated or not a healthy cell, then apoptosis is the stage where it kills itself. It's cell suicide. In cancer cells, that is switched off. Now, I only recently found out why it's switched off. I've spent a long time understanding how a cancer cell becomes a cancer cell. I've done a lot of research. I've spent an awful lot of time reading biology books, searching the internet, scouring the internet, reading peer reviews of many different things, which I won't talk about now. But basically, it's very basic cellular division, and apoptosis is killed off in that cell. It's switched off, sorry, in that cell cycle, and that is how a cancer cell becomes a cancer cell, because a mutant cell is allowed to carry on and replicate. And of course, the cycle goes on and on, where it replicates. I had learned that our cells, in order to replicate, they use a system called glycolysis, which basically means breakdown of glucose. Now, when there's enough oxygen in that cell, in your body, then it then switches over to the Krebs cycle. And the Krebs cycle is where the mitochondria inside the cell uses oxygen as energy in order to replicate that certain cell. Now, a cancer cell doesn't use the Krebs cycle. It stays in glycolysis. And it stays in glycolysis simply because there is not enough oxygen for that cell to switch to the Krebs cycle. So it stays in glycolysis. Now, when it stays in glycolysis, you get fermentation of that cell, and it uses glucose for its energy in order to replicate. So why does it do that? Why does that cancer cell stay in glycolysis? And like I said, because it doesn't have enough oxygen. Now, if that cell did not adapt and mutate in order to replicate, then that cell is going to die. Because that cell doesn't want to die, it has to adapt to its environment. Now, if its environment is low in oxygen and very acidic, then that cell will adapt to that environment. It can't use the Krebs cycle because it hasn't got enough oxygen. It has to use glycolysis. Now, glycolysis obviously uses glucose. So that's why cancer cells eat sugar quicker than anything else. The cell has adapted and mutated in order to survive. A cancer cell is not trying to kill you. A cancer cell is merely desperate to survive. It's desperate to replicate, because if it doesn't replicate, your body will die. It's a survival mechanism for your body. And as backward as that sounds, that scientifically is how it works. So that's how I understand that it's how a cancer cell becomes a cancer cell, and why it becomes a cancer cell. If I've totally got the wrong end of the stick and somebody knows far better than me, then please explain it to me in a way that I can understand, because I would much rather understand than go along with thinking I've understood something when perhaps I haven't. But I also hope that in some way has made cancer a little less scary. I know it did for me when I discovered exactly why. I felt more empowered, and that actually cancer is not this big scary disease that wants to kill everybody. It's just the body's way of surviving and kind of giving us a warning, I guess, that there's something not quite right. I am a firm believer that knowledge is power, and I try and learn everything I possibly can about things that are important to me. I guess that's what we all do. Cancer's important to me. It's been a massive part of my life and a massive learning curve. So when I get information, I want to share it with people.